Welcome everyone to the Service Lounge. I'm your host, Brandon Nixon, and with me today, I have my co-host, Christian Egan on the call. And today we have a guest speaker, Geno Walsh from Qvale Auto Group. Geno, how you doing today, man?
Good to go, man. I'm ready to rock and roll. Don't talk about football, but everything else is good.
Yeah, don't get me down that. I've got the Broncos sign behind me, so it doesn't really
Yeah,
help.
I saw that. I was thinking about, well, at least your quarterback might not be done forever. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, Geno, thanks for jumping on. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure as you've seen the last couple episodes, we've really been trying to build around getting the experience of what customers are experiencing at the dealership. And today we're taking quite the turn. We're going to be talking about building a high performance team at a dealership. And so the reason we thought it'd be great to have you on and really excited to have you on is your experience. So before we jump in, I'd love to, Geno, introduce yourself to people who don't know you. Give us some background of who you are, your experience, what you've done, and let's hear about it.
So my name is Geno Walsh. I work for Qvale Auto Group. I've been here for 14 years as of 2 days ago. So it's kind of cool. That's a long time to be at any place in the car business. That's almost like dog years, 14 times 7. I don't know. That's a lot. I can't even count that high, right? But it's been a great journey with the team, and I started off in buy here, pay here, worked my way into getting into the e-commerce side of new cars, became store operator, executive manager of operations, retail operations. And then I got really serious about focusing on process, especially with service. And, there's this tool that's out there. I don't remember. I think it's called Update Promise. It kind of like connected the dots for me from what I was doing in variable into service. And I looked at it as like, wow, I've been looking for a service CRM forever where I can measure activities and then have people focus on the activities that are the most fruitful. And that's what we've been doing. We've been using a lot of technology, whether it's on sales or service, to help make our team members' lives more efficient. But more importantly is to deliver an experience that is top tier. And I always say that brand equals your process equals your training, right?
Yep.
So if you have a solid brand, then you have a solid process. And if you have a solid process, that means you have solid training, right? And so you don't get there without that. And your customer experience is your brand, right?
Yep.
So your customer's experience is your brand is your process. Your process obviously is the amount of effort and energy you put into making every one of your team members the best version of themselves.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing I've always admired about how you've done business. I know we've been working together for quite some time now, but when we first got together, you were always on the forefront of process, right? And also I've seen you over the years always being that first one to dive into new technologies, new processes, always wanted to be the pilot for certain OEM programs or this or whatever it might be. So you're not afraid to dive in because, like you said, you've built a process around to get utilization and performance out of your team. So thanks again. And, I will say, Geno, after working with you over the last couple of years, I've learned a lot about how, from the service side of the business, how you can bring up different techniques to actually get the team to utilize certain processes or even certain tools that you bring in after you get a lot of pushback, which kind of leads me to one of my first questions I got for you. And explain this to the people who don't know, because Qvale started with, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but 13 plus locations, right?
16
yeah. Plus locations. 16. How have you, from an executive operations manager role, how have you found being able to manage that size of a group when you do make a shift in any process to get everybody all on board? Because I'm sure you're getting detractors, right? People who don't want to do the process you're putting in, especially when it's something new.
So first thing is you got to go after, there's two things. You can either go after the store that's super willing, right? Or you have to go after the store that needs it the most, right?
Yep.
And then if you find a store that's super willing or you find a store that needs it the most and you get immediate, feedback, you get immediate performance uptick, then it's really like a FOMO situation. Like there's a fear of missing out.
Yeah.
When you see a store that, was at, 48% absorption that moved their way up to 65% absorption, that moved their way up to 85% absorption. Their effective labor rate went up $50. And then you're like sitting there, you're making all these comments about how great you are, but meanwhile your revenue retention is sub 75%. Your parts retention is lower than your peers, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got no more excuses. So we at least I do this, as I've done this with quite a few different teams. It doesn't matter whether it's in service or sales. In sales, for many years, we used to use what's called the 3 C's, right? And I'll take you down this road. I'm a really good
Yeah.
storyteller.
Yeah.
So the 3 C's in sales used to be like, see the keys, see the car, see you later, right? Like
Yeah.
that. You sold a car and you're like, here's the keys, see you later. I don't want call me when you're ready for your. And what we did there is we kind of said, okay, we're going to take those 3 C's and we're going to turn them into commitment, right? So the number one thing is a commitment to the process, and that starts from the top down. Like if you have a leader, or if you had people in management positions that aren't bought in and aren't committed, then you have a foundation that's made out of sand for any process change, right? So the commitment's the most important thing, and that's why I said willing, right? So the desperate become sweetly willing, because people who aren't performing well know that, like, hey, I'm either going to go this way or I might not be with the team anymore, right? Or you get somebody who's really progressive and wants to try different experiences to make their lives better and make their customers' experience even better, right?
Yeah.
So you get that commitment, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be the best plan on planet Earth. When we first started Update Promise, like, all we wanted to do was to get people to get the technicians to make the MPIs.
Yeah.
And then it was get the technicians to make the videos. And then it was get the technicians to make the MPIs and the videos, and then have the service advisors send said videos and MPIs, right? And what we used to say all the time, and I don't know if you've talked to Drew in a while, but we used to do this thing, and we said the road to success always
Road to
narrows.
success. We did that at the deal out in Napa together, right?
Yeah. So whatever was successful for you before, getting people to turn the computer on, right? Like that. Oh, hey, we turned the computer on, logged in, right? And then it was sending the MPI, and then it was sending a video.
Yeah.
Then it was getting the customer to actually look at the video and look at the MPI. And then it was making dynamic videos. And then from dynamic videos, it was getting proper MPI sent out to the customers. Then it was getting the customer to view the MPI. Then it was getting the customer to go from viewing the MPI to approving the work, and then getting them to pay for the work.
Yeah.
And then doing the follow-up. So the full life cycle of the process. But it all starts with turning the system on and then holding each other accountable to that commitment. Every day we're going to log in. Every day we're going to get the technicians to do the MPIs.
It's not all at once, right? You got to get each step, and especially when you're changing such a large process at a dealership, if you try to just go, all right, let's go hit 90% across the board right away, you're going to get a lot of people who are like, oh, yeah, well, that's impossible. I'm not going to get there. So I like that. I'm going to use that more, the road to success, because you got to build it there, right?
Yeah. You got to build it there. So like what you did yesterday looks good to you today, then you're not improving, right? So my old football coach, Jim Grove, used to say that to me all the time. And I was like, what? What's that mean? And then the older that you get, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like you can't get really excited about what a new prerequisite is, right? That's your new baseline. Like, don't get excited about, your new baseline, right? Yeah. Get excited about creating a new baseline, right? Every day. And for us, you get that commitment, and then to layer in the commitment, first what you do is you kind of incentivize people. So what we did with a lot of our technicians was we wanted to get dynamic videos, and we wanted people, first of all, we wanted them to make videos. Secondly, we wanted to get dynamic videos. We would do a competition with the technicians, and we would give out gift cards anywhere between $100 to $500, right? An amazing video can take your RO from $300 to $3,000, right?
Yeah.
We've seen one of our best videos ever was a brand new advisor, and the technician did a dynamic video on a Porsche on a brake job, and it was a $19,000 ticket, right? and all the advisor had to do was get the video from the technician, and then send the video to the customer. And then we said, just do this, pick up the phone and ask him what he thinks. And the customer goes, if it needs it, let's get it done. And it did need it, right? So we weren't selling something that wasn't necessary. But the visual for a lot of customers was so huge, right? Customers, just like everybody else, has either a learning or a buying preference. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, and some people are kinesthetic, right? And for a lot of our customers in the service lanes, we've been giving them pieces of paper and not giving them all the information. And what Update Promise and the videos did is just kind of bring the walls down so that you could see what was going on in the service department and see why you actually needed it, right? So these technicians started to get really excited about potentially getting a $500 gift card.
Yep.
Right? You get 10, 15 of the guys in there, and they, this is what I call mama don't know money, some tattoo money, right? Because it's hard to take money out of the bank account to get that new tattoo. But if someone gives you a $500 gift card, mama don't know about that money.
Yeah,
so,
don't tell my wife about that one.
Yeah. So these guys would like really do amazing. They went from being like mumbles, like
yeah,
to like, hey, this is your technician Johnny, and I just want to tell you about your car, and you would see this level of like enthusiasm pick up across every single technician, even the ones that weren't really into it, right? They knew that there was like a level that they needed to get to, and then they went from using like very analog tire checking and brake checking to start using digital versions of it that really popped on the screen. So when they're doing the video, the customer sees the digital reason why they're only at 30 seconds on their tires and why they need to take care of them, right? And so then now just like everything sold has a story well told, now they had a video version of it, but we got them to buy in for the $500 gift cards. Well, once we took away the $500 gift cards, they realized that
I'm already making more money.
They're making more money. They're no longer like their success is no longer dictated by the advisor in the lane that could care less, right? Not all of them care less. I'm just saying some of them aren't as good as what a video can do, right? And so and since then, and that we started that back in even a little bit before Update Promise, but that we've been doing it now for, this will be our 6th year in January, and that was kind of, we first started the videos at the sales side, and I was like, hey, why don't we just try it in service, and then bam, right? And so so you have to have that commitment, and then that's the first C. The second C is you have to have consistent reporting, right? So you can't have a commitment to something. I heard you say 90% earlier. You can't have a commitment to 90% video sent, 90% MPI sent if you're not looking at it on a consistent basis, right? So if you don't have consistent reporting, we do once a week, we do a full report on every single one of our service advisors at every single one of our stores. It pulls in the data for our menu presentations, pulls in the data for discounts on menu presentations, pulls in the data for our communication AI versus their one-to-one communication with the consumer. We measure that. It pulls out how many ROs they have versus how many MPIs were built, how many MPIs were sent, how many MPIs were viewed. And then it looks at how many ROs versus their videos and videos sent, and videos viewed. And then we look down and we see what their upsell percentage is. We call that a revenue capture report. Like they offered $100,000 worth of services and they captured, $35,000 worth of it. That's 35%, right? And we yellow, green, and red every single one of those folks, right? So they're peered up and they realize
the going green report, right? Yeah, they're all trying to go green.
They're all trying to go green because once you get in the green, you get the green, right?
Yep.
and then you go down and it's funny, like the leaders at the top of the report and they follow through the rest of the report, they just go all the way down, are the ones that have the highest initial RO, they have the highest upsell, and they have the best customer satisfaction. I don't know why that works that way, but if you communicate with your customer, you're upfront with your customer, and you advise your customer, and you use the tools that are available to you, your customer usually spends more money and is happier, right? It's kind of crazy. So we took all of that and then we tied it to their pay plan, right? So not only did we give them carrots to begin, we gave them a stick afterwards. I hate to use that analogy, but that's the truth, right? So if you weren't going to be committed to it and we had the consistent reporting that we're looking at on a weekly basis, it was going to cost you, right? You could be the best in the whole wide world, but how do we know? I don't want to ever win by coincidence. I always want to win by knowledge, right?
Well, we speak to locations all the time too that, well, this guy's been here for 20 years and he's been my top performer for 20 years, right? But then they bring in this new process that we know is going to overall elevate the entire dealership. And you've got that top performer who's your main detractor, right? He's the main guy that's going like, hey, I don't want to do this new process. Well, we'll leave him alone because he's always been the top performer, right? But when you start to, road to success, when you start driving everybody else in that direction, that individual, like you said earlier, becomes, going a FOMO type experience. What am I not doing, right?
That brings us to the last C, which is competition, right?
Yep.
So we had commitment, we had consistent reporting, and we have competition. My favorite thing is to take the guy that worked in he was a porter or a valet who wanted to get a step up, right? And we're like, oh, you want to step up? You want to become something different than you currently are? Why don't we start you off as an internal writer, and then we'll take you from being an internal writer, and we'll have you start working customer pay. One of our best advisors currently at our Audi store, his name's Stefano. I don't have a problem saying his name.
Yeah.
But he was just one of those guys that worked in the lane at one of our competing dealerships. He owned an Audi. He loved Audi. He was enthusiastic about it, but he never wrote business before, right? Never, not once. So he didn't have any bad habits.
Yeah.
So then we put him in the process. We showed him why we're committed to it. He started focusing on all of that commitment and doing the process the way that we trained him and taught him. And he's probably our number one writer next to another person. And they're both brand new. They're both in their 20s. They never forget about being at the dealership for 20 years. They've barely been on the planet for 20 years.
So you're bringing up a great point. And Christian, I know you got a question, so I'm going to let you ask your question next. But I had that on one of my notes here that I wanted to talk about, right? The industry's constantly talking about, we have a technician shortage. We have a technician shortage. We have a technician shortage, right? And it used to be, well, we have advisor shortages, right? And we can't get advisors in. And you have proven the model that you don't need someone who's been writing service for 20 years to come into the service department and follow the process. You can bring a BDC agent or even somebody from a grocery store and bring them in and teach them with no habits, and they can very quickly get themselves up to being high performers.
Yeah, our we've had two now that have gone from being in our service BDC to becoming service advisors, and it's a really good segue. Like, they're making X amount of dollars, they want to make more. Okay, great, put you down there. They know how the technology works, right? They've already communicated with the customers. They know all their pain spots.
Yeah.
So then you land them into the position. It's like that. You bring in somebody that you recruit that doesn't know how to use the system at all, and you watch them like fail in competition versus somebody who was in the service BDC role a couple months ago. And you're like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Well, it works because they have a high capacity for the technology, and they have the right aptitude and attitude, right? So that's kind of where I see a lot of the success models. And that's where, like, the third C, like I was saying before, the competition kicks in, because they're the ones that are, we still do some competitions with the teams financially, but those are the guys and gals that are winning, right? Mm-hmm. The ones that aren't winning are the ones that are set in their ways and they know how it's going to work. Those are the same people, by the way, if there's an operator out there, those are the same people that aren't sending MPIs to customers.
Yep.
Those are the same people that are putting each individual dealership at risk for potential litigation. Yep. Meaning, like, you send a customer out, customer came in with a 250,000 mile, 2002 name your brand car. We brought it back in there. They didn't want to spend the money, but you sent them out with, all green check marks because they didn't do the MPI fast, because they were just coming in to see how much it costs to get their flex capacitor fixed, right? Right? The customer drives off, blows out their tire, wrecks into, we are. Yeah. So that advisor who's set in their ways and doesn't want to do the process the new way is actually putting yourself and your dealership in a pretty precarious situation. So that's just one of the other reasons. That's not even it is a financial based one, but it's a longer term financial based one, as opposed to what you can make upfront.
Sure. So Christian, I know you got a question you want to jump in and ask.
Yeah. So Geno, you were talking about, the positives of following process and what you get out of it. But when you had team members employees and locations and they weren't meeting your expectations with the reporting you were checking on? How are you handling that and turning that from a negative into a positive?
Well, I used to work at a bar when I was younger, and we used to say that you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And that was at the end of the night. And I heard somebody say it much nicer, which was, "You better believe, or you'll be leaving."
Yep.
And if we give them an opportunity to perform, right? We're not going to just say, but we're committed, and we're going to talk about it over and over again. And if you're not successful, usually those folks self-select and take themselves out of the pool.
Yep.
Right. Because they realize that, like, we're not going to go away. We're going to continually talk about your MPI cent rate, and we're going to and it costs you money.
Yeah.
Right. So if it costs you the way the pay plan works, you get paid more on customer pay than warranty, and more on warranty than internal. But then you get an override for CSI and for utilization. And it can cost you, if you're writing $100,000 worth of gross a month, it costs you $1,500 or $18,000 a year if you don't want to use the tool. And guess what? If you don't use the tool, probably your customer's not happy. So that's going to cost you another $1,500 a month or $18,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it's $36,000 a year income. Like, hello.
Self-explanatory there.
Yeah.
We use a similar, I've always been taught in my career too, especially when it comes to hiring, right? Hire slow, fire fast, right? But oftentimes, to your point, you don't even have to get to that fire point, because those people will weed themselves out, right? They're going to, not be performing at the level everybody else is not, or is performing at a different level than them. And then you'll start to hear the excuses coming out of them of, oh, well, I can't get to where I'm trying to get, blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, they're either leaving because they weren't performing, or it's just a mutual, hey, it's not going to work out here. We've got somebody else that can deliver, right?
Well, the best football team I've seen over the last 2 decades were the Patriots. And they used to have a thing called the Patriots Way, right? Yep. And what that meant is, like, whether you were talking to Bill Belichick or the groundskeeper, everybody knew what the goal was, which is to win the Super Bowl, right? And there's no coincidence that we use the terminology the Qvale Way either, right? Because everybody should know exactly what we're trying to establish with our customer base, which is that open, upfront, transparent, whether it's service or sales process, that's going to lead to high customer enthusiasm, high customer excitement, and obviously get good scores with the factory. But it's also going to get repeat and referral business, and it's going to continue to have your customer base come back over and over and over again, because they've dealt with so many other dealerships that are, they're smoke and mirrors, right? Yep. And we've literally said, we're getting rid of the mirrors. In fact, everything's up to you. If you want to do the work, it's up to you. We suggest that you do the work, but if you don't want to do work, it's up to you. And then we index that work that wasn't done, and we'll follow back up with that customer later and say, you didn't want to get the work done. So,
well, your Qvale Way mentality, I've always loved that, because it created a brand for the group and for the customers in your region to know that if I'm going to a Qvale store, I know I'm going to get a next level of an experience. So for those who are dealerships who are out there trying to build a better process for themselves and build a brand like a Qvale Way, what would you say their first step needed to be to start that brand? Because there's plenty of dealerships out there where, yeah, great, you're a local dealership, but you haven't really captured that brand like you do with Qvale Way. What's that first step?
Well, so the first step is finding out whether or not you actually need to change anything, right? I wouldn't tell anybody to change anything if their available hours and their actual hours are all the way there.
Yeah,
they can't build another bay. They're at full capacity. They're maybe they can go double shifts or something like that. But for the most part, technicians aren't going to play that game anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, but if they're at full capacity as far as their hours are concerned, and they have amazing connectivity between posted labor rate and effective labor rate, and their CSI and SSI is awesome and it's off the charts, then this probably isn't for you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't fix what isn't broken, right? So, but I doubt that's the case for most of the dealerships that are out there. I think everybody that is working at a dealership knows there's an area for improvement, whether it's in CSI, whether it's in getting more hours out of the shop, whether it's in getting more dollars close to what your effective or your posted labor rate is.
Well, I've always said too, like you bring up a good point that don't fix what's not broken, but at the same time, the best time to fix a leaky roof is when it's not raining.
Oh,
right?
yeah. When
So
the sun's shining.
that's the perfect time to start jumping in and diving in. When you are at a comfortable spot, it's a perfect time to look inward and go, okay, where can I improve? Right? I'm getting complacent. Let's identify those complacency areas and start addressing those.
100% agreed. But I would tell you, like, if you're going to embark in change management, make sure there's going to be a plus for it. You know what I mean? Like if your plus is I'm doing it because the factory wants me to do it, then you're not going to get real commitment from anybody.
Yeah, no one.
And you won't have a customer experience, and you won't have a brand, and you won't have a process, and you won't have the training. Right? You're just going to have, well, the factory's making me do it, or my owner's making me do it, right? But if you're like, here's a specific goal, which is, I want to get at 100% of available hours, or I want to go from being in the bottom quartile in customer satisfaction in my market to being at the top one. Or if your effective labor rate isn't matching your posted labor rate, those are effective goals that you can measure and you can hold people accountable to. And those are things you can rally around and see some performance improvements that get you excited and get the team excited, and they put more money in everybody's pocket, whether it's the technician, the advisor, the service manager, or the dealer principal, right? So, but if you think you're capped out, and obviously we've all heard that story. Once you think that you're done, that you probably are.
Yeah.
But if you think you're capped out, then I wouldn't suggest going after it. But I think a lot of people on this call or watching this podcast know there's always room for improvement. That's the biggest room on the planet. You know what it is, right? The room for improvement.
I like it. I'm going to use that. I'm going to snip that one out. That'll be one of our posts that we post before.
Yeah, there you go.
I like it. So I'd say, Geno, we're coming up to the end of this. And the last question I wanted to ask, and part of it is because you provide a wealth of knowledge to any dealership or group out there because of the experience you've gone through, from going from a large group to a small group to large again, and back and forth, and new team members, new dealerships, buy sells. For somebody who's listening in that is a new leader, right, coming into a higher executive role like yourself, what's one piece of advice that you would give them to make sure that they're getting a high performance team and delivering at the highest level? What would be your one tidbit of advice you'd bring up?
Well, the first thing is that you got to really focus in on the larger goal, the team goal. It's always got to be about the team first and about you second. You can't build a mission statement off just the performance on a financial statement.
Yeah.
Right. Like your due north when you walk into a new operation has to be more than what the financial statement's going to look like. Because the financial statement will take care of itself if you take care of your customer, right? So if you're due north, which I hope most people's due north is the customer's experience and trying to foster that repeat and referral opportunity in business, then you're probably going in the right direction. So then if you're focusing on what would enhance the customer's experience, and you're focusing on like where customers are being wowed, right? Like where are they being wowed right now?
Yeah.
Like why do some manufacturers lose market share to another manufacturer, right? And I'm not going to just throw out names, but you know who they are, right? And you say to yourself, well, what's the difference? Well, they make an amazing product, they deliver that product, and they stand behind that product, and then they have a great supply chain so that if anything happens with that product, they're taken care of, and the customer's experience is like way up there, right?
And every department supporting that central mission, like you explained.
Yeah. So the due north is that customer, right? And that customer's experience. And if you can focus in on then making it where they're at, and that's kind of what we used to say the Qvale Way is, we meet the customer where they're at, right? Whether it's online, offline, or anywhere in between.
Yeah.
We're going to meet the customer where they want to be met, right? 90% of the customers now want to be met digitally. This little thing with my kids on it, that's where they want to do their business. This is their whoopee, as they would say. They feel comfortable with it. They I don't know. There's some stats that they click on it like 2,500 times a day.
Yeah.
Right. If the more that you can put it in a platform that they feel comfortable with and they feel like they're in control, the better your experience is going to be for your consumer. And if the better experience is there, that's your due north, then you have the opportunity to create that atmosphere or that environment that's not only successful for your customers, but it's also successful for the people who work for you, right? Because they like it too. It's faster, it's more efficient. Customer doesn't have to like wait in the lobby all day long, right?
Yep.
They can do it right from the comfort of their couch or their workplace or the soccer match, wherever it's at, right? So
Yep.
That's what I would say. Like, focus on what your due north is. That's not the financial statement, because that's important too, right? You have to have that.
Yeah.
And you can spend way too much money on things because everybody can sell you a million different things to try to make the customer's experience right. But focusing on what you can improve now.
Kurt, our CEO, has always talked about chase the execution, the money will always come. If you chase the money, you're always going to be chasing the money, right? And I think that's directly what you're saying. I love that tier. Focus on the customer, focus on your employees in the process, and everything else will fall in place. And it goes back to that road to success. I'm going to keep using that.
It narrows.
Yeah.
It narrows.
Well, Geno, really appreciate you taking the time today. There's a lot of great information that I personally got out of this, and I know that our viewers did. So I'm sure we'll have you on another podcast down the line. But again, appreciate you going through this with us, and excited to see more success coming out of Geno Walsh over the next couple of years. So.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Geno.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.